Psychology runs your life. The inner texture of your mind and the environment which fosters your thoughts determines all the actions that you take and therefore all the outcomes you have in your life. And I'm not just talking about how, or I am talking about how your thoughts feed into your actions, but also how much your thoughts and the, again, inner texture of your mind affects all other aspects of your life and of your health. So, of course, with your thoughts, we're talking about mental health, but your thoughts impact your physical health. Literally just how you think about, how well your body is able to recover or how strong or weak you are can physiologically determine some of those outcomes. Same thing with emotional health. Like you can think certain ways and therefore change your emotions. Your emotions are just downstream effects of your thoughts. The exact same scenario can happen to someone and they can see it, and each of them can see it in two different ways. One of them can see it in a positive, optimistic light, and another can see it in a negative, pessimistic light. And they will have two different waves of emotions that come into them, and therefore those emotions play back into their thoughts and then their actions. They will take two separate actions. One will be, more optimistic and more, beneficial in that sense, and one will be pessimistic and kind of be fall down a rabbit hole in that way. Your thoughts are directly tied in with your purpose. So, like, why you wake up every single day. If you don't really have purposeful thoughts and you don't just have a purpose within your life in general, it's hard to, you know, have health in other areas of life. We know that people who have a lot of purpose live a lot longer than people who don't. Same thing with your social life. Again, your thoughts are going to impact how you socialize with other people. And we know that humans are social animals and that we must, have really deep, strong connections with others in order to, I think, to live a good life. And we know that that's in the literature as well with people who are more social and within communities, they live a lot longer and have a lot better health outcomes. Same thing with your environment. Your physical environment affects your thoughts, like digital environments with laptops or your phone affects your thoughts. And so you just have to be very weary of all of these and especially, you know, try to jump into metacognition and look at how you're thinking because it just all the downstream effects all the downstream effects affect the rest of your life. Um, and I don't really like the word psychology. I do and don't. It gets tainted by the psychology of, you know, medicine, quote unquote. I don't really know the word, but psychology in where you start just diagnosing people and giving them medications, which I think is most of the time wrong. I think what psychology should really only be is learning about how the mind works and then how to reconstruct the way that you think in order to be more conducive for you. I already made videos about depression and anxiety, and those are really just bad patterns of thinking. And those bad patterns of thinking affect you physiologically and make you have less of these, you know, chemicals in your brain, dopamine, serotonin, oxytocin, which is what these doctors and psychologists just prescribe to patients with quote unquote depression or anxiety to bring those levels of chemicals back to the proper level in their brains when it was just the fact that their thoughts were off. And of course, it's not as simple as just your thoughts. It's your thoughts over long periods of time that translate into your subconsciousness because your thoughts impact your brain physiologically with all of the synapses and chemicals that run around in your brain and therefore affect all the other areas of your life. It's such a interesting topic to think about. There are so many examples of this about how your mind controls your body and changes it physiologically. I was talking to actually, I'll start with this. There are so many studies and they're so cool. There's one where, they give two groups of people the exact same shake and they tell one group of people, you know, it's Oreo Blizzard cookie shake. It's super high in fat and sugar, yada yada. They tell the other group this is a lean protein shake and it's has really good macros, etc. Both shakes had the exact same macros, calories, whatever, and they gave them to the two groups of people, and each group responded to the shake differently. The group who was told it had like all this high sugar, whatever, their glucose and insulin responded a lot more than the other group, and it was all just what they thought, which is so crazy. Another thing is we all know the power of placebo, right? But there's even newer studies about how even when people know it's a placebo, there's still benefits beyond normal. Like doctors will give people a placebo bottle and it's just like sugar pills or whatever. And the doctor will say, hey, this is just a placebo. It doesn't have any, active ingredients or whatever, but I really think it can help your cause or whatever. And the people will take these placebo pills and actually get positive benefits from it, whether it's, feeling less pain or having worse, better symptoms. It's so crazy. I think most people have heard of the rat situation, but that one's super cool, where they put a rat or a mouse, I don't remember, into water and it treads water for 15 minutes before it quits and starts and drowns. Um, and right before, it drowns, like when it stops and goes underwater, the scientists pick out the rat and, dry it off, feed it, give it some time. I don't know if it was hours or like a couple days, and then they drop the rat back in the water. The rat then treads water for something like over 12 hours, from 15 minutes to 12 hours, all simply because they had now the hope that they were going to get rescued. Of course, the rats don't know that it's when they drown that they get rescued. They just think that, oh, I am going to get rescued at some point, so I better keep treading water. And it just shows the power of the brain and the power of perspective. It wasn't simply that the rat failed. It was they didn't have hope, they didn't have purpose. And so those are why I've said that they are so big for people. And some of my friends, I'm very well known among my friends and among my school, whatever, for being, very much into health, nutrition, etc. And my friends will sometimes like shit on me and they'll say, like people in Italy, whatever, they smoke every single day and they live like so long. It's like, yeah, but do you know why that is? And they're like, oh yeah, because smoking's not that bad. Yeah, maybe. But you ever think that they also, the Italians walk everywhere, have a super healthy Mediterranean diet, uh, eat a lot of fish all the time and get their omegas in, have a great sense of community and are very social with each other in their small towns, have a very good sense of purpose within that community. It's like everything that's devoid in America, where people are just secluded, living by themselves, eating shitty ass food, and, not having a purpose in life because they're going to some corporate job. And it's like, I would rather people smoke cigarettes every single day but do every single other aspect of their life positively and even have the thought that, cigarettes are healthy for you. I think that's better than like what the average person is doing nowadays in the United States. And so it's all about trade-offs. Um, I just think that smoking alcohol is bad, and so I just don't do them. I don't really have a drive to do them at all. Never have. And I've just heard from a lot of people that it's not worth it. So that's why I don't. But yeah, the power of the mind is crazy. And I made this after I made the video because I didn't give, many proper examples. And there are hundreds of thousands of examples. Actually, there's another of, when you put the jar, when you have these giant insects that can jump really, really high, but then you put a jar over their head and they jump and hit their head on the ceiling and then they reproduce and then their children jump and they can only jump as high as the jar And then when you take off the jar, they only jump as high as the jar was, when really they can jump a whole lot higher than that. So it was simply just a box around their brain, around, what they think is possible. Believing that anything is possible is such a important skill. And it's easy to say, but kind of really hard to do many times, because it will just come up in areas of your life where you doubt yourself, or or just have limiting beliefs in terms of being tired, or other things. So there's so many examples, and really fully understanding this is just seeing so many and hearing so many examples of this, that it just becomes obvious to you and true, which is what it has for me over the many years. So you can get back to the video now, but it's hugely related to what you should do in your life. And so when you're trying to organize your life around anything, right? Everyone always has goals. So a goal is just some place that you want to be, or something you want to have. So it could be, buying something that you want, or having a better job, or finding a good boyfriend or girlfriend or partner, or something like becoming smarter, or getting good grades, or trying to get in shape. And then once you have goals, like everyone has goals, but what a lot of people don't have is a proper understanding of themselves, their own identities, and their values, and their priorities. But in terms of your identity, is who you think you are, or in reality, who you actually are. And so a lot of people, or at least myself, as I've grown up the past, 4 to 6 years, I've really done a lot to try to reflect on my childhood, and just everything that I've seen in life, and try to really understand who I am and why I am that way, which also ties into the things that I value. You know, for me, it's very much health, the health of me, the health of those that I love. And then, of course, those I love, friends and family, are very valuable. Having like a strong and sharp mind is very valuable to me. Being able to move and be fluid and be resilient to injury, being able to play, you know, fun sports and games and be active with my friends and family, just enjoying delicious food together, nice experiences, fun games. That's really what I like. And those are kind of my values. You can have, whatever values you want, but you need to really understand who you are and your values, in order to kind of create the best mental environment so that you can reach your goals. And what you have to do is, when you look at yourself and you see your identity, and maybe it's not really what you want it to be, of course everyone is going to be quote unquote mad, or uh, they're not going to like it that they're not where they want to be. Of course, that's what creates that sort of drive to want to be somewhere else. But you also need to try to just accept it and not be so judgmental about it. The only thing that's going to change it is proper actions and time. Especially if you're younger, like to my younger self, it's normal. You're so young, you're just getting into this stuff. But then again, like having those thoughts is kind of what propelled me to change, and so it's kind of a double-headed sword in that way. But if you can just be non-judgmental and accept who you are currently, and still see the vision for who you want to become, it's a lot easier to then go ahead and take those steps. And by taking those steps, we get into our priorities. So once you can really understand who you are and what you value, as well as have your goals, you can then look at what you are prioritizing with your time. I've made videos on this in the last couple of days, but you really want your priorities and your values to completely line up, so that there's no disparity within them. If you value all these certain things, if I value health and family, but I don't exercise and move around and eat healthy and spend time with my family, those don't necessarily line up, right? So if you value them and you truly value them, you want to be spending time on them. Like if I have all these values I have, but then I look and I'm spending like 4 hours on Instagram and TikTok every single day. Those don't line up. And really truthfully, in me deep down, my identity, I don't want to spend all that time on social media. And so I had to work to, you know, curate my environment to be less conducive to falling victim to those sorts of things. And not just not doing that, but also find things to replace them that are better, which for me was exercise, reading to make my mind better, spending time with friends and family, eating healthy foods, yada yada. Then, after you have all those things set, you also need to really just have a good perspective and celebrate small wins. We will get mad at ourselves for the tiniest little mishaps that happen in our life, or things that go wrong, or if we get lost or sidetracked or whatever. But rarely do we ever congratulate ourselves for wins that we have. Even the bigger wins, we don't congratulate. We just move the goalpost and look for another goal to go towards. But really, you should be celebrating kind of the small things, every little workout, even a couple sets of a workout, even just showing up to the gym or just putting on your shoes. Like, you have to decrease the quote unquote like bar that you have to get over depending on your level. When I was something that I do every day is I take a cold shower because I just like it. And I've been doing it for many, many years now. But the first, like when I was in high school and like sophomore, junior year, and I first started to do it, I would be in there for 2 seconds and then I would turn the water hot. And then I was able to go up to like 5 seconds and 10 seconds. And over the course of probably like months to years, I was able to kind of build that up to just the regular 3 minutes that I do every single day. And even when I was able to build it up to those 3 minutes sometime, and then it became, turning the water even colder after I was able to get in there and stay in there and build up the time. Then I had to turn the water colder, and then it was kind of redoing the cycle again. And then it was trying to get over that mental hurdle of actually stepping into the water every single day. And I would decrease the time between when I turned on the shower and actually got in, which would maybe take 3, 5 minutes when I first started, to then only being like 5 seconds. And stuff like that is hard to, you don't want to seem like such a small person where, you have to congratulate yourself for simply getting out of bed or for simply putting on your shoes to go to the gym. But if that is what your bar is at, then there's nothing wrong with celebrating that, because then you can continue to move forward and build on that every single day. Because as long as you're learning and growing by that 1%, it doesn't matter where you are because you'll continue to move forward. And over time, as long as you continue with that pace, you'll be good. And even when you do, like I made a bit of video about yesterday, you're gonna fall off, you're gonna have setbacks. That's part of the process. And the people who are successful in any domain ever are the ones who push past those setbacks. Of course, they may feel like shame or sadness or whatever, or anger for messing up, whatever. Just have a positive outlook and a good perspective, which I'll talk about in a sec, and continue to push forward because that's the only way that you achieve your goals. And then having a positive perspective. This is something that I've thought about so much and I talk about a lot, which is, there's always someone in a worse position than you. And I know that can seem like, oh, like, yeah, of course, I can always think about these people who are in worse situations than me. But like, truly, if you view your life positively, no matter how bad it is, thinking like, oh, I'm thankful to, whatever, whether it's God or the universe, or even your ancestors. I'm just thankful that I was born and that I was born at the time that I am in this wonderful earth with all this beauty of all the people around the world and all the animals, all the nature and trees and different landscapes, and I love all of them. And even with your emotions, I love feeling all of my emotions. Even, I'm generally more of like a positive person and have good emotions, but still, I don't mind feeling and sitting in sadness when I'm sad, or sitting and feeling that anger when I'm angry, or any sort of other emotion, whether it's positive or negative, because as a human, I want to experience that full range of human emotions. It's like looking at, again, the beauty of Earth. You have rainforests, you have savannas and deserts, and grasslands. You have all these different, and snow mountain peaks, all these different terrains. What makes it beautiful is their comparison to each other. What makes it beautiful is that the earth is not all the same. It's not all just grass. It's not all just water. There's coral reefs and all these different animals and plants and environments. And that, you know, difference is what makes it beautiful. And that's the same thing with us humans in the way that we're different from each other, but also in the way that, we're not always just level-headed or always sad or always, quote unquote, super joyful or happy. And so I don't mind feeling those emotions. And I've also learned to, properly regulate them. And having these perspectives is one of the best ways I have learned to regulate them. Simply, again, your thoughts will impact your emotions. So if I wake up one day and I think to myself, oh, I'm tired, or oh, I don't want to do that schoolwork today. I can't believe I have to do that schoolwork. Oh, I have to get up and go to this soccer practice. Like, I don't want to do this. I'm gonna be in a bad mood. I'm not gonna have nice emotions. But if I wake up and I think, oh, what a nice, wonderful day on this planet. I get to go play soccer with all of my friends, even though it's just a regular practice or whatever, and we're in the middle of preseason and I feel super sore or whatever. I love feeling my body as it's adapting. And, I get to go out in the nice sun and just be with my friends and play soccer. And I get to, learn and go to school and increase my knowledge and my skills. So you can always flip the paradigm. The how you feel, what you do, it's all a construct. It's all a creation of reality that you've done in your own head. Reality itself is just objective. We all see it through the lens of our eyes and all the perspectives that we have in our brain. And so if you can simply change those around to have them positively benefit you and bring you closer to your goals, or at least, or probably better, more likely to do the actions that bring you closer to your goals, then that is what is going to give you the best possible psychological and mental texture that is going to yield you the best life, I think. And the last part is just like I was talking about with, lowering the bar. It's just starting as low as you need and then simply building up from there, which is really hard to do personally as well as whenever you're coaching someone. And this is something I have to learn and internalize for myself, is that when I want to coach people in life coaching, in nutrition, etc., I need to, number one, see them as a whole person, which I usually always do. And I also need to help them understand this concept of, their psychology and their mind runs everything in their life. And a it's simply the views that you have and the way that you see, both literally and figuratively. And so if you can just change that around, the whole paradigm of your life will completely change. And I've seen this in myself and I've seen this in other people, and it is really truly crazy and beautiful. And that's why I just love the beauty of life and everything in it. And so that's why, the title of this video was Psychology Runs Your Life, because your mind really does. And it is so much more powerful than we know. There's so much more research that has to be done to fully understand it, and we don't fully understand it. So use what we do understand, because the only thing that you have is your mind. Truly. That is the only thing that you will ever have in this life, whether you are absolutely broke and at the bottom of society, or you are the richest person on the planet. Whether or not you have a good mind is what determines the outcome of that. we all know about, the rich kid or whatever who has all this money but has a terrible life, or those people who become rich and fall into depression. It's because the texture of their mind is not it's not positive for them. If you can find peace and calm when you're poor and when you have nothing, you will have peace and calm and even more joy when you're rich. And so, no matter where you are in life, this skill of curating a positive mindset and having good perspectives and outlooks on life is one of the highest ROI things that you can do and will yield you benefits for the rest of your life, because it really is just your life, the way that you see everything and the perspectives that you have. Those are my thoughts. Thank you for watching.